And now, it's the Finding Your Spine podcast with host Chase Spears.
Welcome back to the Finding Your Spine podcast, where we call you to live and lead boldly in the truth. I hope you all had an awesome Christmas. And today I get to sit right next to the second best gift I've ever received, my wife, Lori Ann Spears. How are you, babe?
I am good. It's good to be here with you.
It's fun to have you in. You've actually been in here with me at least once before watching recordings. First time in the hot seat. How's it feel?
It is a little intimidating to be on this side of the cameras, but I've seen it done enough and looks pretty fun.
You're going to be a natural because all this is talking, and we've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, we used to take some long walks and just talk for hours and hours.
I mean, that was pretty much how we hooked up, right? Talking while driving to church and walking around campus and
broke college students walking. It was free.
What else do you do when you're undergrads and you have no money? Yeah, and we haven't shut up since. Well, I thought it would be really fun to come in today. You know, it's the end of the year. We've done a lot of shows in here, and I thought it would be neat as we wrap up the last episode of 2025 to just kind of reflect a little bit and think about and talk aloud about what's the year been like, what have we learned about ourselves and boldness and trials and hardships and joys and peaks and valleys, and just kind of share with their audience kind of what our journey has been like. And there's been a lot of changes in our life this year. I mean, like December 2025 looks nothing, and I mean nothing like December 2024 did.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of this year, we still hadn't heard from the Herzog Foundation. You'd tried out for their, they had podcasters come and see if any would fit with them, and we hadn't heard back from them. And it was like, this is the year you are starting a podcast no matter what, because you are a natural born storyteller and you know people with stories to tell. And so when you got the email that said they were actually going to pick you up, I was so excited, because this is right down your alley, talking to people and telling their stories and introducing the rest of us to things that we had no idea about.
Yeah, I've learned a tremendous amount. And, this goes back to one of the themes that I've picked up from talking to a lot of people, whether in the seat or through the camera, almost to a T. Every single one of them, when I've asked them, like, what enabled you, like what undergirded you when you were going through a trial and you knew it would be easiest to say uncle, if you will, and just give up. What anchored you? What held you firm? And almost to a T, a lot of them obviously share their relationship with God and the strength of the Holy Spirit, and they also say, but my spouse was there for me. And especially among the men, my wife was a rock. And I mean, that's the story of us. I remember, what was it? It was fall of last year. I'd had several people say, hey, you need to do this podcasting thing. And I was like, I don't want to do a podcasting thing because I'm a writer. And in writing, I can catch my comma splices, and I can edit. Writing, I never say I never have awkward pauses. I never say all those filler words that I hear myself all the time behind this microphone doing, and I'm like, stop it. And I remember that one day we were on I-70 driving down by Legends, eastbound. And there I was, and there you were too. And I made a comment to you. I said, hey, babe, I just want your counsel on something, because I've had several people tell me I should do this. And I really don't want to do this. I don't think I'd be good at it. But I wonder if I'm missing an opportunity of something I really should be doing, because I'm just being stubborn. And you said...
I don't remember what I said, but I was like, yes, you need to do this. And I have memories of back to many moons ago, before we even had any children, living in Knoxville and listening to the radio, and you practicing your radio intro voice just as kind of a funny thing, but thinking, there was a short 1-hour show. A guy named Fred was doing it at the time. And I was like, you could do that. You could get on and like talk about the things that interest you. And so this is actually even better than what we had originally thought about 20 some odd years ago, where you're actually getting to help other people tell their stories. But, I do remember back in the day, Chase on radio telling the stories, letting people know the things that they never even thought to consider.
Yeah, you believed in me when I didn't, and still do. I'm not sure why, but I'm really glad you do. That's one of the really neat things about this. I think back to, had I followed my dream, I'm sure some neat stuff would have happened, but how amazing things have turned out through the past that the Lord has opened the door for. I mean, we would have never in a million years when we first met thought I would be a soldier.
I remember that conversation too, where I was like, hey, I grew up as a military brat. What do you think about the military? And you shut it down with, nope, not for me.
Yeah. And what an interesting journey that's been, good times, hard times. I mean, it was through the challenges of that and through the struggles of, especially the last few years of that institution, that really opened my eyes to the importance of resolve and the importance of knowing where your red lines are, and why I'm so fired up now when I get to meet other people who share those convictions and get to bring them in and talk with them about it. And these stories, I don't think they're nearly as unique to people as maybe we like to think sometimes, because I think we all go through them.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply a matter of what do you do with them in the moment. And I faced that in my life as a soldier, as a professional. You face that as a mother, as a wife, as a leader in the home, as someone who influences other ladies, who thinks. And so it's really neat to be able to meet other people. And I think that's something that's really important, is to realize you're never really as alone as you think you are, right? We all go through things, but so do other people, right? But a lot of other people maybe just don't let on quite as well. And I've never been good at not letting on that well. I've got a poker face, so like I would be bankrupt if I tried to be a professional gambler.
Oh, you and me both.
That's why we need you to come along as a card counter. You and your wicked math skills.
I do love how you're sharing the stories of other people, because there's a old saying that says courage is contagious.
Mm-hmm. Winston Churchill.
And I know that there have been times where we have had circumstances where I should have had more courage, and I didn't, because I was worried, what is everybody going to think? And I was also worried, like, I'm raising children. I don't have time for this. I just wanted to go away. And listening to all the people on your show who've gone through situations where they could have been like, you know what, I just want this to go away. I just want to be done. And they sat down and they thought about it, and they're like, but the problem's still going to be there for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not say, I'm going to let it go away. And so now I am able to have a little bit more. I haven't had anything big happening in the last year, but I still have had a bit more courage to be like, instead of I'm going to allow this to go away, I'm just going to let it slide, whatever. Been able to say, you know what, the buck stops here. I'm going to stand up against whatever nonsense is going on in the world.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. I know what it's like on my side, we've talked through back when I worked at the Combined Arms Center, and I had that whole situation where they were saying, "Oh, now we know because you're a Christian, because we know that, we're going to force you to be the face and the main point of contact for all things related to transgender policy," which was kind of the beginning of a big journey for me. As for listeners to know, I did not. They backed down, but it was a red line moment for me. And there have been other times in my life, and mostly the last 5 years of my military career, where there would be certain stands that I would take, and I was very confident in them. Doesn't mean they were easy. They weren't. Not a single one of them were. And I know what it was like for me going through that. What was it like for you? I mean, you're having to live with me, but you're so close to it.
Well, I know I went through a lot of different stages, especially after I saw the actual counseling report in your office and read through all the words that were said. And first I was flabbergasted. And then, I think by nature, I'm almost like a turtle. Oh, something bad's happening, I'm going to tuck in my shell. And I think I told you, I'm like, we just need to leave. There's got to be a job somewhere else. They need to PCS us right now. We need to get out of this. And you had the much calmer head and was like, I am not moving the entire family just to get away from them doing the wrong thing. And, they're another instance of my definite not having courage at the time. But, then I was like, okay, well then I can't run. I can't flight. So now we have to fight, and we need to go get the Jags, and we need to do other things. And you're like, well, let's wait a second. And I learned that the hardest thing is waiting. And waiting and then continuing to do the next right thing for me was very hard, because I'm like, I want to be doing something about this, but while I'm waiting to see what our life's going to be like, I don't want to go grocery shopping and do the mundane tasks. I want, my head is so filled with this going on that it took a minute to be like, okay, I think what I need to learn is, to be still and know that the Lord is God. And just, you actually seemed to be doing that a lot better than I was at the time.
I tell you, I didn't feel like I was doing it better.
But for me, it was definitely, okay, I just need to I need to make sure that dinner is on the table. I need to make sure that kids are getting taught the things that they need to get taught. I need to make sure that laundry is being taken care of. And then in doing those things and being like, you know what, I can't do anything. I do have to give it all to God. And it helped me to realize, even if we were doing something, it's never in my control. So I might as well just do the things that I'm supposed to do. But I was never worried. I think a lot of it was just, okay, here's what I think needs to happen. And my biggest struggle was just taking myself out. I'm not even a part of this. I'm your wife, but I'm not the one who is going to decide whether you move or whether you get punished, or I just have to support you. And so it was an interesting period of time to learn about, just sitting back and saying, I trust in my husband and I trust in the Lord. And okay, so that looks like getting dinner on the table, going grocery shopping, doing laundry, cleaning bathrooms.
Keeping everything together. Yeah, and that was just, thinking back, I realized I wasn't even looking around me thinking, all right, what else is happening with the people that I love, because my head was so in the immediate fight. like, what do I do? Who do I talk to? What moves do I make? How do I pray? And by gum, I never had to look around and be like, how's the house doing? Thank you for keeping it all together then. I don't think I've ever said that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I think I did take a day during that time to just be like sad and angry and mad, kind of just on your behalf, like how dare this person do this awful thing to say that, the things that were said about you. I was just so angry, really, about saying that you didn't care about soldiers because you wouldn't affirm someone who thought that they were a different gender. I'm like, that's the opposite of care. This is so ridiculous. And, I did take a day to just like be mad. But then I realized like I can't take off the rest of my life while I'm waiting to find out what happens. I need to move on. And so Elizabeth Elliot, a amazingly courageous person, the wife of Jim Elliot, who was a missionary who was slain, and she has a quote, "Just do the next thing." And that has to be something that goes through my head at least, anytime something crazy is going on. These days as I get on social media and see the crazy things that people are saying about you and I want to get mad. I'm like, nope. Okay, just do the next thing and just keep moving as I wade through this world that's going crazy.
I'm thinking back to, the verse that says a 3-strand cord is not easily broken. And we took that very much to heart. That was even a part of our wedding. Yeah. We talked about, and I thought that was really cool with like Xavier and Emma when they got married. They actually went and tied.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Wasn't that was yeah, I was like, man, why didn't we actually tie? That was some good thinking. They must have had some godly parents.
They must have also had like Pinterest and stuff that we didn't have available, so that you could put together these really awesome ideas.
Theology Pinterest. I didn't know this was a thing.
I'm just, you bring the theology, but then you take it to Pinterest, and Pinterest is like, here's some cool activities you can do with your awesome theology.
There's a whole underworld there that I was unaware of. What else is out there that I need to know about?
I don't know.
You're talking about Elizabeth Elliot. Who are some of the other authors? Because, I picked up my love of reading from you. Thank you, by the way. You've been doing this your whole life. 2020 was when I really started getting into books and realizing I need to do this, and now my days aren't right if I'm not spending time in books. Who are some of the people that have spoken the loudest to you through their words?
So my two most, actually, I think there are three most influential authors. One is C.S. Lewis. The Chronicles of Narnia and the Space Trilogy in his fiction have helped me, especially the Chronicles of Narnia when I was younger, helped me to understand some big theological ideas. I remember growing up, I was terrified of eternity, of this never ending, and I couldn't process it. And then I read The Last Battle, and I realized, well, that's not truth. That's not the Bible, but it is a picture of what will be. And just like in The Last Battle, Aslan is good. Therefore, eternity is going to be good. Our God is good. And so eternity is going to be better than we can even imagine. And it took that book for me to make that realization. And then as I got older, in the Space Trilogy, That Hideous Strength helps me to realize most of the evil that we see going on in the world is a spiritual battle. And a lot of it starts off looking really, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's for the good of people, and but deep down, it's pulling us away from how God has created us to be, and that anything that's pulling us away from God is not for our good, it's for our bad. And, just to help me realize, as I see some things that I see in the world, and I'm like, that sounds good, but I just feel, I'm like, oh, that's from NICE.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what that acronym stands for at the moment, but, I see NICE in the world a lot of times. Another author who has greatly influenced me is the author Robin Jones Gunn. She is a Christian author. She wrote the Christy Miller series way back when I was a teenager, and actually wrote them before my, went through the 80s, through my teen years. And it just helps me to see teenagerhood through a Christian perspective, see the things like going to school and relationship pressure and friend pressure and all these different things through a godly perspective. And now she has books about adult women who are my age, who are traveling the world with their friends. And I'm like, oh, now I want to go do some traveling. But I also realized, like, friendships are incredibly important. And, her new series, Suitcase Sisters, has, helps me look at how I need to be developing my friendships and how I need to say some of the things that I'm afraid to say to my friends, because I'm like, you might not be happy, but you might need to hear this, and to also be open to letting my friends speak into my life and help me see where I need to grow. And then my last author, this one has nothing to do with courage, but Ellen Montgomery and the Anne of Green Gables series. Just regularly throughout my life, I am thinking of that particular book, especially raising daughters. When I was younger, I related to Anne. And now I'm like, oh, I realize I'm kind of the Marilla. I'm raising these daughters, and how do I raise these wild and free spirits of mine?
It's one of the neat things about when you find a really good author. It doesn't matter what time genre they were in. It's almost like they're still writing to you today.
Yeah.
Right. And I love C.S. Lewis for that same reason. I remember you talking about him a lot when we were dating, and I knew the name because I grew up in a Christian home, but I had never read him. I don't think, forgive me, Mom, if I'm wrong, but I don't think my parents had read him. Could be wrong about that. But I knew the name just wasn't familiar, and you talked about him a lot. And I feel silly now saying this, and I'll take whatever laughs I'm about to get. But I remember that when the movie that Disney did, Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, came out, and we went and saw it, and I had no idea about anything Lewis. I just knew he was this great Christian author that a lot of people referred to. And we watched the movie, and I'm like, holy cow, like, does Disney realize they just did a movie about the gospel story? And of course now I'm like, oh, yeah, duh. That's like Lewis weaves the true theological and everything.
Although I think we realized that, I'm not entirely sure that Disney, they did after that one. I think that it was after that they transferred studios.
Yeah, maybe, but that's that particular work.
Yeah.
Speaks so loud, and I'm really glad you recommended that Hideous Strength, because when I read that, it was almost like a did you see it? Did you see it?
I know. I have to constantly check the when it was written date, because I'm like, are you sure you didn't write this today? Like, the only thing that says it wasn't written today is there's no talk of a cell phone or a computer.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it could have been written in 2025.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Like, human nature never changes. And we just wrapped up Christmas, and now begins the looking forward to Easter, and where we remember, we've just celebrated the Nativity, and we remember Christ's birth and his incarnation, and then our next big, recognition on the timeline as Christians is the crucifixion and the resurrection. And it's so easy to look and say, oh, well, the Romans were a barbarian society and we're so much more enlightened and yada, 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 yada. But the value of really getting into good old books is seeing we're no different than those who came before. I mean, we have different creature comforts and we have different technology, but we're the same human beings, the same vices, the same challenges, and the same desperate need of God's grace to keep us from doing the worst things imaginable.
Yeah, it's been interesting reading through with our daughters. Our oldest, we're doing, some of the great classics of the Western world and reading Aristophanes and being like, this was written over 1,000, almost 2,000 years ago or something. And it is still relatable today. And then reading Montaigne and saying this, some of it is very different, but some of it, the ways that people interacted with each other, different ways that people think about education, like we keep thinking that all the things that we're thinking these days are new, but then I read, this stuff from hundreds or 1,000 years ago, and it's like, wait, they were thinking those things. This was new back then too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest moment that really opened my eyes to that was reading Pierre Viret and his work on the responsibility of the lesser magistrates. And of course, Scripture predates that by many, many factors. And the more I spend time in Scripture, I'm like, oh yeah, I see us humans today in it. But I think when you're raised with Scripture all the time, it's easy, at least it was for me, to compartmentalize and be like, well, okay, but that's Scripture and that's holy text, and to look at it differently. And we should rightfully look at it differently as in the Word of God. But to not also pay attention to the history of it. And so I was reading Pierre Viret, I want to say this was 2020 or 2021. Like I got into really kind of some red pill authors during 2020. And he was writing in the 1400s, a Swiss theologian, and he was talking about the responsibility for what he called the lesser magistrate. So, and we would say like our local elected officials. So if you have a governor, the lesser magistrate might be your county commission or city commission, and your higher magistrate would be the president. And he was talking about the importance of when the higher magistrate departs from what is true, what is morally justified, that's why God gives us multiple layers of governance. So, and it is responsibility of the lower levels of governance to call the higher levels of governance back to righteousness, back to morality, because government is endowed with that responsibility. We have a lot of Christians today who try to act like, oh, it's okay if government is corrupt and does whatever it wants to do because that's just the way it is. And well, when you look at the writings of Paul, like government is there to be a terror unto evil. Like it's there as a minister of God, and we a lot of our future neighbors in heaven forget that. And so when I was reading through Viret and seeing what he was talking about, of course we're living through 2020 at that point in time, and it was just such an eye-opening moment of these principles are timeless and these vices are intergenerational. Like we never truly permanently solve for these things. It's always a continual process of every generation and every time and every epoch having to say, this is what is right and this is what is true, and we have to be on guard to preserve the integrity of those things, because the world will inevitably try to pull towards evil, but we have a responsibility to stand in all times and all places. And so he was just so instrumental for me in that. And then of course Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton. Oh my goodness. If any of you like got a few more days off work, read Orthodoxy. Read Heretics too. If you do read them both, read Heretics first. But yeah, there's just so much wisdom there, and I just like Chesterton's cheek because he has a little bit of he's kind of tart, and I like that.
Chesterton gives that good theology, but with a bit of a bite to it.
Yeah, kind of like theology with a glass of Jack Daniels in hand.
Yeah.
and we have a few others following in that vein today. So no, I'm so grateful that you kind of help point me towards some of those authors, and it's a lot of fun digging into that. And that's kind of been another neat thing of doing this podcast here, is getting to meet people who have done longer form written works and dig into it. Dr. Carson, my goodness, like that was amazing getting to sit here. He was in that seat you're in right now.
Yeah, and I was over there.
And you were over there, and he was here.
And I was just sitting in awe. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty much, you think you were in awe. So, I enjoyed it. And for anyone who goes back and looks at the podcast, you probably won't pick up on this, but I'm just enamored with the fact that I am literally this close. I'm literally within 3 feet of a man who I consider like living history. And afterwards, one of the wonderful people here asked me, "So what did y'all talk about?" And I said, I really don't remember. I'm still like gobsmacked that I was hanging out for an hour with Dr. Ben Carson. I went back later and looked at the episode. And apparently I was able to think of some questions because we talked the whole time. But
well, another famous quote that I don't know who to attribute it to, but it they won't remember what you said, but how you made them feel. And I remember Dr. Carson being in here and being like, he has just the heart of a servant. It was, how can I help you? What's the best for you? And, he didn't take his eyes off of you the whole episode. Like he was just a man having a conversation. And it was just amazing how completely devoted to the moment, and then also completely devoted to being a servant that he was. And that's I realize this is a show about courage, but I think that's what I took away the most from Dr. Carson's visit. Well,
and that's a great reminder that courage is not necessarily doesn't manifested in bravado or a roar. Now, many times it is. But, I mean, that man is so strongly resolved and yet so gracious at the same time. And I think sometimes maybe some of us get it confused a little bit that, okay, if I'm being called to be courageous, that means I'm being called to be loud and disruptive and, to have bravado. And sometimes you are, but that's not necessarily what it means. And there are many people who are not that loud, but boy, they're deeply courageous. I mean, think of Esther in the Bible.
Yeah, I think it goes to that biblical value of meekness that, in fact, in a lot of translations has been taken out of our current, the more modern translations of the Bible, because we don't understand it. We hear meek and it rhymes with weak, and we don't really understand it. But the picture that meek is supposed to give us is steel wrapped in velvet. And, really strong, but then coming across is also very soft. And he definitely embodies meekness to its heat. He's got the strength and he's got the moral fiber and the courage, but then he is just, that wrapped in velvet, not weak, but definitely just kind and thoughtful and servant-like.
Yeah, it's kind of what's the old saying, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Ooh, I know who that one goes to.
Oh,
I think that's Muhammad Ali.
That would be Muhammad Ali. On that note, not trying to sound self-promotional, but I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this, because I know you listen to every episode, because you're awesome. True fan, dedicated. Are there any that you enjoyed that really spoke to you in your place in life as a wife, as a homemaker, as someone who's put up with me?
The teacher from here,
Kadrin Sullivan?
Kadrin, yes,
Kadrin.
Sullivan.
Boy, she was amazing.
Just listening to her story and her desire to, constantly wanting to do the right things, number one, before God, and number two, for students. And just the way that she was uncompromising in that. Her story was, it was a really neat one to listen to, because you hear that, there are teachers out there, but it was really neat actually getting to hear one of those teachers who are out there who are still fighting for the best for our students.
Yeah, she is absolutely a prized fighter. It was such an honor to sit and talk with her, and she was just like so nailed in and so dedicated that come what may, this is the course that she has chosen, and she knows it's right, and she will not be moved. And she's not arrogant about it. There's no like, come hit me with your best shot, but resolved, like, no, this is right. And we must draw this line in the sand. And whatever that costs me, it will cost me. But it's still right. It doesn't change that it's right. And because it's right, I can't be moved. It's not as stubborn I won't be moved. I can't, because it's what's right.
Yeah.
And we need so much more of that. She was amazing. I don't know that I have a favorite episode, because golly, the quality of people who just shocked me by saying yes are so amazing. But one stands out, one particular moment of one, and that was Brandy King. And you hear me on my, as you might say, tangents or diatribes from time to time, on the civil military topics that I'm so fascinated about, and that I write about, and that I argue about frequently. And she said something that I just thought encapsulated this idea that I've had for a long time, but she said it way better than I could, that if you're in the military and you don't get to enjoy the rights of being a member of the Republic, then you forget what you're fighting for. And once you forget what you're fighting for, you can be convinced and ordered to do anything at all. And that just so struck me. Like, this is why it's important to keep having these conversations. This is why it's important for me to continue my civil military work, even though at times I feel like I'm, standing at the door and knocking to the point that I've knocked a, little round spot in the door and it's not opening. But like, it's still important to not give up, because history has shown what happens when armies can literally be ordered to do whatever and not stop and ask the question, because they've forgotten what it is to be free men. And so that's something that still stands out to me, and I'm really grateful for that moment.
Yeah, hers was a wonderful episode. She's so enthusiastic, and she was a wonderful example of someone who just trusts God no matter what, and understands the concept of, even when there's hard times ahead, the best place to be is in God's will. So if you're having to stand up and do something that might be a little bit scary, might go against the grain, might be not the norm, but to stand up and do the right in spite of those things is still the best place to be, instead of compromising and not being where God would have you be.
Yeah, she's very theologically grounded, and the overwhelming majority of people who come here are. I mean, that's where they really draw that deep well from. You have to really be kind of the tree rooted by the river There's such truth there. I'm kind of curious this has been an amazing year, and we're going into 2026. And I've got a long list of people that I'm excited about having on, and then an even longer list of people that I'm in the process of working on getting on. Pray, saints, pray. Who would you like, if you could throw a dart at a board, if you could play the lottery, for who sits in that seat at some point, who do you think ought to be here?
Well, I also have a list of, this would be an amazing person if Chase could get this person on. But we are in the Kansas City area.
We are.
And I do like football.
There's a team.
There is a team, and they have an amazing player who is invited to speak at Benedictine College graduation. And he said the most controversial thing in the world, that being a wife and a mother is like the top job for a woman. I don't think those were his words. He said it much more eloquently than I am. But he said that, education is important, and what you go out and do in life is important, but women don't pass that by for being a wife and a mother. And I was like, yes, somebody said it. Woohoo! But unfortunately, Harrison Butker caught a lot of flack for that. So I would love for Harrison Butker to come on here, sit in this seat right here, and get to talk about, did he think he was going to come under fire for saying that? Because I think that he thinks probably a lot like me, that a woman being a wife and mother is not a controversial topic. It's ontology. It is what we are. I mean, we don't have to be, but as women, we can only be wives and mothers, and it is a great job. I mean, we are the only ones who can be wives and mothers.
Yes, you are. You are. Now, he was amazing. I saw that speech, and I was just like, oh my goodness, an NFL player saying such basic truth out loud, unashamedly. And boy, they came for him. They threw everything they could at him, and I was so grateful to see, he didn't back down. He didn't come back and do the grovel apology video that so many people do to kowtow to the mobs. And I was also really grateful to see, the Hunt family that owns the Chiefs, they stood with him.
I was about to say, and to throw out another name, if Clark Hunt might want to come on and talk about what it's like to be a Christian NFL team owner, I would be interested in that story. I don't know if anyone else would, but I would love that story. So who's, on or near the top of your list of who you'd like to have on?
Well, you've just said two really good ones. And Mr. Butker and Mr. Hunt, you're welcome. Call me. I've got a big list at home, but kind of thinking off the top of my head, Pastor James Coates.
Yes.
He's, for those who don't know, he's the pastor or the lead elder and pastor at Grace Community Church in Edmonton, if I remember correctly, Alberta, Canada. And I recently finished reading a book that he co-authored about kind of like Ray, like what is the proper role of the government when it comes to the church. I think it's titled God versus Government.
Yeah, we read it together as a family, and it was
so powerful. Yeah. And when 2020 came, of course, governments around the world were harsh. Governments even in the U.S. were harsh. Canada was truly kind of in the dark ages on that. And they're still in the dark ages on a lot of stuff. It's really, really hard to watch. I mean, I've had Brian Isted come in as well, and he talked about a little bit of what's going on up there. And I got to also go on the Blender News podcast that's out of Canada earlier this year as well, and talking with those guys. Just, it's crazy how dark that land is right now. But Pastor Coates, when the local authorities came and wanted to shut his church down, he held firm. And there wasn't like a big, open fight, you can't tell me what to do or anything like that. It wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of saying to the state, we respect the authority of state. State is a God-ordained institution, an instrument of common grace, a ministry for the benefit of mankind. But state is only given authority up to this point. And then at this point, there's a boundary, and the authority of church picks up. And the authority of church presides over when, where, and how we will worship the Lord. The state is not given authority unto that. That is government of the church. And he said, we respectfully hold to that, and we will not close down our church. We will continue to gather and worship because we are called to do that biblically, and we will do that under the lordship of Christ and under his reign and rule. And he literally was willing to go to prison over it. And he did. And he refused to back down on that. And it wasn't a loud, I'm being an activist, anything like that. It was a humble courage, a humble steadfastness that the Lord has given us this decision authority under him. And if you take out consequences on us for that, well, you will then have to answer to God for your abuse of authority, agents of state. And he did it. And I have such admiration for him. And of course he's out now and he's back in the pulpit, and what a marvelous testimony. But how many other pastors should have followed that example? And I hope that when we are tested like that again, because I know we will be, I hope it's not in our lifetimes, but we know that there are people who hate the church. Satan did not decide to stop hating the church in 2022 as things calm down. I hope that more people will remember that and say, you know what, there's someone who got a better grade on the test than I did. Maybe I need to study harder for next time.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have him on. If there's any way I could get him to come down here, I would just be tremendously honored. That would be a fun discussion.
That would be amazing. He definitely showed a lot of courage, him and his wife. And he's also really smart on these things. Through reading the book God versus Government, I learned about the different spheres of authority, that there's the civil government, there's the church, and there's the family. And the world works best when they are each doing what they were assigned to do.
Yep.
So that would be a great guest to have over here in this chair.
It would be, yeah, to really talk about like the fact that God has ordained these different areas of authority, not necessarily levels, but areas of authority, and that they are required for goodness.
Yes.
Here on this post-Genesis 3 earth. So, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Well, golly, babe, this has been really cool having you here. We're getting ready to slide into a new year here in just a couple of days. The next podcast will be my first in 2026. Any particular things you're looking forward to? I don't do the New Year's resolutions because I'm terrible at them. But any things that you're dreaming towards or would love to see in the new year as we continue walking that way as a family?
Oh, goodness. In the new year, I'm looking forward to 2026. Our oldest son will come back from deployment, and we'll get to reunite the whole family together again and do lots of fun things. I hope that 2026 brings some extra time for you to do some book writing.
Yeah, I need to get back to that.
Get some books out there, because you this podcast is a great place for you to say some of the wonderful things and for people to learn. But I think books would be another way to get out some of the stuff that you can help people learn.
Yeah, I think another thing I think would be fun, and I have no idea if I'll get around to it in 2026 because there's so many other projects I want to get after. I think it'd be cool to do like a Find Your Spine book and like pick like 15 to 20 of the stories that we've told here and, write them, go through the transcript and rewrite them. I think that'd be fun. Anyways, sorry. Just the random things that hit my head.
That would be an incredible book. I always like books with, I love literature and long form novel and stuff like that, but I also really like a book where it's got, chapters that are an encapsulated story about something that really happened and can help me learn. And so that would be so much fun. I would pick that book up and read it and maybe even give out a couple as presents to friends.
Oh, I would even autograph it for you. It would happen. It would happen. This has been fun. Thanks for coming up here, going on stage with me, and but more than that, thanks for believing in me that I could do this, period. You're a big part of this story of why I'm even doing this.
Well, and I think I need to give a big thanks to the Herzog Foundation.
Yes, ma'am.
For taking this host and his idea of just talking with people who have gone against the flow and stood up and said, something is wrong and I can't continue in the way that things were flowing. And because I know that, this podcast inspires me, and I know that I'm not the only one who has been inspired and encouraged by the amazing stories that people have come on and shared with us.
Yeah, it's such a joy. And every time I walk in this building, I just kind of pinch myself and ask, am I really getting to do this? Really? So what a blessing they've been to our life, not just in this, but even in the teacher trainings that we've gone to. Oh,
yes. The teacher trainings, I homeschool, but they are like, yep, that's a teacher. You're teaching school. You can come on into our classes. And the science teacher training that they do with Answers in Genesis and the Ark was just, there's so many things that I'm like, I know this is out there, and I know that these proofs for how the Bible talks about creation has got to be out there. And they're like, here, sit down and, here's the fossil record, and here's why millions of years to make these fossils, or thousands of years to make these fossils, doesn't make sense. And I learned so much. And their partnership with Museum of the Bible and getting to go out there and do Bible teacher training, that was also just such an encouragement as someone who teaches my children and someone who tries to encourage other moms to homeschool their children and do it well. And it was just amazing. And they've done so many other wonderful teacher trainings that I haven't been able to go to. But for anyone who's teaching at a Christian school, or you're homeschooling your own kids and you're trying to figure that out, I highly recommend looking those up. Yeah, they're amazing. That would be awesome to, in 2026, get back to another one of their trainings. I'd love to go back to the Museum of the Bible again. Yeah. There was just so much to do. There was so much to do and so much to learn. I would also, they've done a couple of great books trainings, and I would love to, because even though I love to read and I've read a lot, all of the great books of Western civilization, I am being introduced to as I try to teach them to my daughter. So it would be great to have a, over the weekend intensive course on, this is the great books in Western civilization, and that would be amazing. That would be. Goals, okay, so we don't do the resolutions, but we have a couple of goals that we want to do. That's great. Well, I love you, babe. I'm glad you came, and thanks for all the support you give me and keeping the house together and putting up with me and listening to the podcast. I appreciate that too. I enjoy learning all the things from the podcast, and then I enjoy in general hanging out with you, so it's good to do life with you. It's good to do life with you. All right. Well,
From us to you, we wish you all an amazing 2026, a very happy new year. And a great way to kick off that new year is to go to herzogfoundation.com, click on the events, find one of those training events, sign up for it. You should absolutely go. It'll just be such a huge blessing to you, your family, your schools. And we're just overjoyed to get to be here on the Finding Your Spine podcast with Herzog Foundation and share stories of bravery and courage. And I'm grateful to the team that helps make this happen. You guys see me, but there's a team behind the scenes. I know Hoskins, who's the other side of the glass, who told me not to do this, but I'm doing it anyways and saying thank you, Noah, for all of your hard work. Tony Barman keeps the graphics straight. Elizabeth Roberts is the one who keeps all of this going and gives me amazing support that I just... Every week I say, how do I get this much support? What a wonderful, wonderful team they all are. And it's thanks to them that we get to bring you these stories of courage and try to encourage you to live boldly, to lead boldly, and to speak in truth. So this has been a wonderful year of sharing these stories with you, and I look forward to doing it again in 2026. Until then, Happy New Year.
Remember to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Finding Your Spine.